Washington comes to talk. And AM 630.
All right. Little John Cougar Mellencamp. Or when I was a kid, there was that show on MTV. Remember Beavis and Butthead? They called him John Cougar Mellenball. Well, I was not born in a small town. I was born in New York City. So, folks, I'm Dan Bongino. We've been talking Syria, trying to lighten it up a bit. Tough topic, folks. There's really no... can't take the edge off this topic. Give us a call, 888-630-9625. We've got callers on the line to hang out. We'll get to you. I promise you, Brent, Gary, Herb, we will get to you. But right now we have another great guest for you. We have Captain Chuck Nash. Captain, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan.
So, first question I have for you. We had Rep. Louis Gomer, KT McFarland, and I've been asking everyone this. Timeline forward, how do you see this? Now, Congress not being in session right now, so they're home, and as you well know, they're hearing it from their constituents right now on everything from Obamacare to tax policy to the lack of economic growth, and now you add another, you add whipped cream onto this pie, and that whipped cream doesn't taste good, this serious situation, right? And all of a sudden, they're getting it from all angles. Now, the president punts, gives it to Congress, says, I've decided, but I haven't decided. I'm going to bring it to Congress. How do you see this proceeding forward?
Well, they're going to obviously want to put this right up front when they get back on the 9th. But if there's any delay at all, Dan, the issue is they get back on the 9th. They're in session 9th through the 12th, out 13 to 16, back in 17 to 20, and back out 21 to 29, meaning they're only in session 9 out of the 30 days in September.
It's a great job, isn't it? Wish I'd had that job.
If you can get to work.
Yeah, really. Great work if you could get it.
Yeah, now the Senate is in session according to their schedule 16 of the 30 days. But, you count weekends and everything. But the House has a very liberal schedule in August. So they're going to have to get this up front. Now, here's the dilemma that the president has worked himself into. It is actually a double blind. The first blind was he made the decision to go out, set a red line, it's all on me, I'm saying this. Okay. Then everybody gets all excited. Senator McCain and Graham go over to Egypt. While they're in Egypt, Secretary Kerry says, and they're in Egypt to try to talk the Egyptian military into starting a dialogue with the Muslim Brotherhood. While they're there, Secretary of State Kerry says, well, the Egyptian military is just trying to restore democracy, totally undercutting McCain and Graham, who were sent there to try to start this conversation. Now, to Syria, what happens? This time, Secretary of State Kerry winds up under the bus, right, because yesterday he was speechifying about how, it's America's got to be known for what we say we do and all of this. And then this afternoon, boom, he shot right out of the saddle, under the bus with everybody else. And now you've got a double-blind situation, meaning if we say we're going to do something that's ill-advised, but we do it, and you measure the reaction that comes from that, i.e. the unintended consequences, right, you can directly attribute those reactions to our action.
Right. We're
in
talking.
This case, if Congress says no mas,
right,
and we're not going to do this, we're not going to give you authority to use force, then President Obama can say, okay, well, therefore I can't do it. Or he could say all he said in the Rose Garden today, which is, I believe, I've determined, I've, and say, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, in that case, if he acts without the consent of Congress, then it's all on him, and we're all going to be reminded of when then Senator Kerry, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, right, threatened to impeach then President George
right.
Bush if he acted in Iraq without congressional authority.
Exactly. We're talking to Captain Chuck Nash about Syria. You know, their foreign policy reminds me of that movie, The Usual Suspects, where they catch Kevin Pollak and they've got him in the chair and they're interviewing him and they say, we can place you in Queens on the night of the robbery. He says, well, that's great. I live in Queens. Do you have a team of monkeys working on this around the clock, or did you figure this out yourselves? I mean, seriously, that you just laid it out. It was like, now we're going to pick A, now we're going to pick B. A's wrong, but A's not wrong because our personnel are still overseas enforcing A, but not anymore. I mean, we are in utter chaos over there right now, Captain, right?
Well, the movie it reminds me of is Being There, but, when you start to focus down on the unintended consequences, if the unintended consequences of action could be a strike on Israel, it could be terrorist strikes on U.S. interests worldwide, including the United States. There are a lot of different things that could happen.
Well, Captain, can I ask you that? Because we had Jim Carafano from Heritage on right before you, and that was one of the questions we were digging into. What do the Israelis do right now? The IAF, the Blue Line. I mean, there's so much. The Israelis, as Jim Carafano stated, and he was absolutely right, they're in a pretty dangerous neighborhood right now. They're not secured by two oceans like we are. I mean, what's their predicament right now?
And that's the downside of doing nothing, which is you can't immediately measure the response, but there is one. And therefore, what do our allies think? If the Secretary of State from now on says the sky is blue,
right,
everybody's going to look up to double check, and they're still not going to believe it.
Right.
So it's not just it's not just our enemies who have been emboldened by this, and they're running off, jumping in the streets and firing weapons in the air. They're all excited because the strikes have been removed as an immediate threat. That's great. Everybody on the bad side of the line is looking at this as another example of the weak horse, the paper tiger. But our friends, the people on the shiny, bright side of the line, have to be saying, oh my God, can we ever trust anything they say again?
We're talking to Captain Chuck Nash. Captain, I agree. Our foreign policy bank account, the capital's been diminished. There's almost nothing left anymore. And we were talking to Jim Carafano before. He had a piece in FoxNews.com, and he had a couple lessons here. And one of them was interesting. He had lesson 3 regarding Syria. A shot across the bow only works if the enemy thinks you're serious about sinking their ship. Now, my question to you here is, let's say we take option 2. We had laid out 4 options earlier in the show. Option 2 being cruise missiles and no boots on the ground, and it does absolutely nothing, and it doesn't kill Assad and doesn't diminish his forces at all. Doesn't the externality generated from this make Assad even more powerful, having survived it? I mean, how do we win in that scenario?
Where we are right now is we are talking about, not even reacting, but we're talking about possibly reacting in some minor measured way to something Assad has allegedly done. In other words, we are responding to his initiative, correct? Right.
So are you not comfortable with the information?
What will we do after we shoot the cruise missiles? Have we taken the initiative? No. We're now waiting for what's he going to do next. In other words, we're still at the end of the whip.
Right. Are you comfortable, though, with the case Secretary of State Kerry made the other day, that they're conclusively sure at this point that this was Assad who did in fact unleash the chemical weapons attack? Because there's been speculation out there, Captain, as you are well aware.
There is a lot of speculation. There are reports in the media of accidental use. There is a report where the intelligence community came out and said, wow, we were monitoring all this stuff for 3 days, and now when it happened, we kind of connected the dots. Well, here we are in the United States worried about all this NSA collection stuff and everything, and there they have units talking to each other, and it takes supposedly a poison gas attack to connect the dots. There is a lot of unknown unknowns in this, and as much as they want to say that it is a, quote, slam dunk, unquote.
Right.
It's not a slam dunk. There's still a lot to be determined, and even the intelligence community has gone on record as saying that they're learning, they're putting more things together as they go. So with all of this, the American people are war weary. They're just tired of hearing about wars, spending on wars, and by and large, 99% of the American people aren't really involved in the pain and the anguish of war, which is the 1% who are actually serving. So you've got a discontented populace. You look at the polls, roughly 80% are saying, don't do it.
Right.
Well, when these folks come back from their August break and come back into session, I think they're going to be looking at the polls just like the White House is looking at the polls. And when this comes up to a vote, I would not be at all surprised, given that the president has staked the prestige of the United States on this. I would not be surprised if the Congress says, no, we're not going to give you authority to do this because, A, you don't have a plan other than you want to fire around at the Syria.
At a moving target, right.
Oh, by the way, you shoot somebody, guess what? They're not going to take kindly to it. What comes next? We don't know. What do you want to do next? We don't know. Not good enough.
Right, people tend to not enjoy that. We're talking to Captain Chuck Nash. I have just a few minutes left with you, but one final question for you. I noticed you alluded to Donald Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns, and I think he was accurate. You have, known knowns, known unknowns. In other words, you know what you don't know. You know there's information out there, you just don't have it. And then you have the famous unknown unknown, to take his terminology, where you don't even know what you don't know. And my question on that front is, we have no idea what is going to happen, second and third order effects with the Russians, the Iranians, with the Saudis, if we are to get involved with any larger effort other than, even if it's just a cruise missile attack, once those bombs start falling and any military actions initiated, I mean, are we correct in to say, you're right, we don't even know the unknown. We have no idea where this is going to go.
No, we really don't. And that's why when the president and the national security team sit down and they start looking and contemplating action, one of the things they have to understand and they have to make a value judgment on is what we are about to do worth those unknown unknowns. Is it really worth it in terms of the national security interest of this country to do it anyway? Because it better be worth something, and it better be worth a lot. Because if it isn't, and you unleash all of those second and third order effects, you're going to be sitting there with more than egg on your face. You're going to be plunging the country into serious, serious jeopardy.
Captain, thank you so much for your time. Again, incredible analysis. Thank you so much for lending us your expertise on this busy Saturday. Captain Chuck Nash, thank you, sir, very much.
My pleasure, Dan.
All right, folks, 888-630-9625. We got 40 more stacked minutes in this show. We got Mike on the line, Gary, Herbert. We'll get to you. Give us a call, 888-630-9625. We're going to be taking a lot of calls in these next few segments, folks. Talking Syria. I'm